Hello, 8th graders. Today we're doing Module 4, Lesson 6 problem set. We will be solving equations. To look at the directions, it says to transform the equations, really transform meaning to simplify it, and then find x. Remember our steps. Our first step is the distributive property. So do we have any distributive properties here? We do here and here. Now, let's do this side first. We have 12x, right? And then we have to go 3 times a negative 2x. 3 times a negative 2 is negative 6x. And then we have to go 3 times 1/3. If you remember, 3 times 1/3. We turn this into a fraction, and we get 3/3, which is 1. So plus 1. On this side, we have the distributive property. What's our coefficient here? It's invisible. 1. So it's a negative 1. So we do our x. Then we have a negative 1 times 9x. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9x. Then we have a negative 1 times a negative 10. Negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 1 times negative 10 is a positive 10 plus 11. And we have our equal sign. So now, once we do our distributive property, we go down to combining like terms. So on both sides, let's combine our like terms. We have an x and a negative 9x, so that's going to give us a positive 1 and a negative 9 would be a negative 8x. And we have a positive 10 and a positive 11 here. So that would be a positive 21. That's all going to equal, we have a positive 12x and a negative 6x. So that is going to be 6x. And then we can bring down our plus 1. After we combine our like terms, we did our distributive property, combine like terms. Let's get our variable on one side. Remember, we always want to get rid of the variable with the smallest coefficient. In this problem, the smallest coefficient would be the negative 8 compared to 6. So to get rid of negative 8, we're going to add 8x. Negative 8 plus 8 is be 0x. No x is plus 21. So we're going to end up with a 21, positive 21, equals 6 plus 8 is 14x plus 1. Now we need to get rid of the, excuse me, adding 1. To get adding 1, we subtract 1 on both sides. And we're going to get 14x on this side, and on this side we're going to get 20. And now we just need to, this is multiplication. To get rid of multiplication, we divide by 14. And we're going to end up with x equals 20 over 14. Now that can be reduced by 2, so x could be 10 over 7. Let's go on to problem number 2. Going to follow the same steps. Distributive property. We have the distributive property here. And we have the distributive property here. So I'm going to bring down my 7x and then do my distributive property. 8 times x is 8x, both positive. Positive 8 times 1/4. I'm going to come over here. 8 times 1/4. Remember, you're going to make 8 as a fraction. And then you multiply your numerators. Multiply your denominators, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So this is going to be plus 2 equals, on this side we have 3 times 6x. 3 times 6 is 18x. You have 3 times a negative 9, so that's negative 27, and then we bring down the negative 8. Now we can combine our like terms. We have, I forgot the plus sign here, 7x plus 8x is going to be 15x plus 2. Here we have 18x, and we have a negative 27 and a negative 8, which is a negative 35. Next, we want to get rid of the, after we combine like terms, variables on one side. So we get rid of the variable with the smallest coefficient, and that is going to be 15 compared to 18 is smaller. So we're going to subtract the 15x out on both sides. These cancel, and we get 2 equals 18 minus 15 would give us 3x's minus 35. Then we have to undo our addition or subtraction, right? We have subtraction, so to undo that, we're going to add 35. And we are going to get 3x equals 37. Now we need to undo our multiplication or division. This is multiplication. To get rid of multiplying, we're going to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we have 1x. We're going to make that x invisible. That 1 invisible, I'm sorry. So it's going to be x with the invisible 1 equals 37 over 3. And there's your answer. Let's go on to problem number 3. Again, following our steps. Distributive property first. So let's look for our distributive property. We have one here. And we have one here. I'm going to bring down my negative 4x. I'm going to multiply negative 2 times 8. That's a negative 16x. And negative 2 times 1, positive 1, is a negative 2 equals, okay, what about here? What's our coefficient? Remember, it's that invisible 1. So we have an invisible negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 2x is a positive 2x. And a negative 1 times a negative 10 is a positive 10. Now we're going to combine our like terms. So we're going to go, let me see, we have a negative 4x and a negative 16x. That's going to give us a negative 20x. Minus 2 is going to equal 2x plus 10. Once we combine our like terms, we're going to get our variable on one side. The smallest coefficient actually is negative 20, right? Negative 20 is smaller than negative 2. So we have to take negative 2. I'm sorry, we need to add, because this is negative, so we're going to add negative 20x to both sides. I'm going to get negative 2 equals 22x plus 10. Now we have to undo our addition or subtraction. We have addition, so let's subtract 10 from both sides. And we're going to get 22x is going to equal a negative 12. Then we're going to divide by 22. And we're going to have x equals a negative 12 over 22. that can actually be simplified to x equals negative 6 over 11. Remember, divide top and bottom, numerator and denominator by 2 to simplify it. Let's go on to problem number 4. Okay, distributive property. We have our distributive property here, 11 times x and 11 times 10. 11x plus 110 equals 132. Now we are going to, don't have any like terms to combine. Variables on one side. Variables on one side. So, we only have variables on one side. So we have to do or undo our addition or subtraction. We got addition, so let's subtract 110. And we are going to end up with 11x equals 22. Now we're going to divide by 11. And we're going to have x equals 2. It's number 4. Let's go to number 5. Number 5. Oh boy, we got some fractions. Don't panic. We'll do just fine. Just follow along with our steps. First is our distributive property. So, looking at the distributive property, we have distributive property here and here. So we can bring down the 37x plus the 1/2. And now let's distribute. What's this number here? Negative what? It's invisible. Remember, it's that invisible 1. So we got a negative 1 times x. And negative 1 times x is a negative x. And we have a negative 1 times 1/4. Negative 1 times 1/4 is a negative 1/4. That's going to equal 9 times 4x is 36x. And 9 times a negative 7 is a negative 63. And we can bring down our plus 5. Next, we need to combine our like terms. So let's combine our like terms. We have over here 1/2, a positive 1/2, and a negative 1/4. So let's do that over here. 1/2 minus 1/4. We have to have a common denominator. Common denominator would be 4. So I'm going to multiply each of these by 2. And I'm going to get 2/4 minus 1/4. And that would be 1/4. So combining these, I get a 1/4. And when I combine my x's, 37x and a minus 1x would give me a 36x. Plus 1/4, that's all going to equal negative 63 plus 5 would be a negative 58. And we have a 36x. Interesting. 36x, and I'm saying if I start with 36x and I add 1/4, that's the same as starting with 36x and subtracting 58. How can I start with the same number? With one of them I add, the other subtract, and I get the same thing. That looks kind of fishy to me, but let's continue on to our next step where we get our variable on one side. So we have to get rid of the variable with the smallest coefficient. They're both 36, so you can get rid of either one. So we're going to subtract 36x here, subtract 36x here. And we end up with 1/4 equals a negative 58. Oh, that's not right. 1/4 doesn't equal that. That's not true. Not true. Remember, if we come up with a solution like that's not true, then we know that there are no solutions to the problem. No solutions. There's no number that we can put in for x that will ever make this true. Can't be done. Let's go on to number 6. Once again, let's start with our distributive property. Distributive property. We have one here. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times a negative 14 is a negative 42. And I can bring down my x equals 15. And then distributive property here, but what number is this? It's a negative what? It's invisible 1, so that's a negative 1. So negative 1 times a negative 9x is a positive 9x. And a negative 1 times a negative 5 is a positive 5. Next, we're going to combine our like terms. So let's do the 6x and the x here. So that's going to give me 7x. Then minus the 42, bring that down, equals 9x here, right? And 15 and 5 is a plus 20. Next, we're going to get variables on one side. We got to get rid of the variable with the smallest coefficient. 7 is smaller than 9, so we're going to subtract 7x from both sides. So we're going to end up with a negative 42 equals a 2x plus 20. Now we need to undo our addition and subtraction. So we got to undo our adding 20 by subtracting 20 from both sides. And we get a negative 62 equals 2x plus 0, or just 2x. Then we need to undo our addition or subtraction. So we're going to, undo our multiplication or division. So we got multiplication. To get rid of that, we divide by 2, and x is going to equal a negative 31. And our last problem for today, maybe the easiest one or the less complicated one for our last. Distributive property, we have that. We're distributing 8. 8 times 2x is 16x. 8 times 9 is 72 equals 56. We don't have any like terms to combine on the same side. Variable's already on just one side. So we may have to undo our addition or subtraction. So we have addition of a positive 72, so we're going to subtract 72. We're going to end up with 16x equals a positive 56 and a negative 72. So if I start at 56 on the number line, I'm going to have to go down 72. So I'm going to end up being below 0. I'm going to be below 0 by 16. It's going to be a negative 16. Oops. Negative 16. Now I need to undo our addition or subtraction. We have, undo a multiplication or division. We have multiplication, so I'm going to divide by 16. And x is going to give us negative 1. Please remember, if you have any questions, you can contact me through Teams. You can call me. You can chat me. You can email me. I'm available all day. Have a great one.